Okay, it all started December 22nd, 2023, when I entered our now closed clients into our lead management system. By January 16th, she finally reached back out texting, "Good morning, I can't afford an attorney. Thank you." Now you're probably asking yourself, what did you text her to elicit that response? Because you're a mortgage broker and a real estate broker. Great question. Sometimes I text things from all angles of options because before we talk to people, we don't know their entire options. So my text was, it's important to know it has to be a civil action against the originator. If you fight a foreclosure, you'll need the right attorney. She couldn't afford one, right? Look, sometimes my attorneys are the only ones that get to earn your business, but sometimes that's what people need. Sometimes they need direction. They don't need a realtor or a lender, and I can't help you, but I might be able to point you in the right direction and at least talk to you about what's going on. Really, we're just looking to start a conversation. So we start texting back and forth, and she tells me that she has 2 kids, is going through a separation, and really wants to stay, but doesn't know how to keep her home. It wasn't until almost a month later that she agreed to meet up with Jessica and I for coffee. Even though we have the address of the people that are foreclosing, it's usually more comfortable for both parties to meet at a neutral location. I'm trying to figure out how to help you, and you're trying to figure out if I'm actually trying to help you and if I'm the right person for the job. We had a great conversation, and we decided that maybe a colleague of mine would have a better idea how to keep her in her home. Basically, going through the separation really tied up her finances. In addition, she was down to working 1 to 2 days a week because of having to be available for her children, pick them up from school, drop them off from school, and whatnot. I mean, you probably know how it is when you have a lack of family in town. And it's not like she'd be able to leave Florida to stay with family. The father was living in town and as active as possible with the kids, which I commend him for. So a few days later, we all met with her at her kitchen table. I mean, my colleague, Jessica, and I. Now I'll spare you the details of the encounter because my colleague that I brought only focused on exacting revenge and trying to screw the husband and take the house from him, basically. And she looked at us like scam artists, and she was not having that at all. That was not what she wanted to do. So Jessica and I left there, and it did not feel good. We said our goodbyes to my colleague and headed for our vehicle, just walking down the street. But as we were walking, we met the neighbor across the street, and his story we'll actually tell another day. This is not about him. For months, I'd send video texts, regular texts, and leave voicemails, but I had lost the trust of this client. I didn't even get another chance to try and figure something out for her and him. Then, on August 9th, Jessica saw it on the foreclosure auction for the date of September 12th. It's almost a month away. The next day, August 10th, again, I sent out a few more texts and some referrals that I sent some people referrals that we've helped. These are realtors. 2 of them are realtors that we've helped in the past. And actually, they were both going through pre-foreclosure. Jessica and I helped them out. And now they're available for calls. They will take calls and we'll send them a small referral as a thank you and help them get back on their feet. So we do that for you too. So if you're a realtor, we will help you in that way too. Anyway, the next afternoon on August 11th, she finally reached back out to us. But her concern was where she would end up living if she sold. And sometimes I'm too logical and rely on Jessica to be my empath because being on the outside of the situation, in my head, I'm thinking 8 days after the auction, the sheriff will show up at your door and make you move out. And I hope you have a plan in place at that point. But like I said, I rely on Jessica to make sure I'm empathetic. Regardless, at this point, we knew we needed to find her a place to live. However, like many in this situation, her credit was destroyed. Her credit cards were maxed out, and she was only working roughly 1 to 2 days per week because of having kids and going through the divorce. However, being a mortgage broker, I'll tell you, it's the consecutive missed payments that destroys your credit and really becomes the nuisance in the future. And finding a place to rent becomes more of a challenge at that point, since most places run your credit score. Now, we try to obtain housing for our clients. We have property managers that we work with that help work with challenging credit cases and even Sector 9 housing, but there's never any guarantees. I will say we haven't failed yet by the grace of God, and all of our clients have found housing after their sale so far. But this isn't about us. This is about their story. And on August 13th, we were invited back to her home to discuss listing her townhome, going over the paperwork, getting it signed, and scheduling marketing. I should say, after I heard back on the 11th, so let's backtrack a little bit, I thought this was an opportune time to track down the phone number of the husband and reach out to him, which I'm glad I did. It turned out they did have a restraining order and can't talk, so I had to be the mediator. But I needed him on board as well. And speaking to him, he definitely knew the auction was around the corner, and he was more than open to selling. At this point, he's getting so many calls from wholesalers and investors and everyone looking to prey on the unfortunate that he's tired of them tying up his phone, to be quite honest. Of course, these offers were to sell the property before the auction for about 55% market value. And most offers in this situation are going to be around that 55 to 60% retail value. But he gave his blessing for us to sell if we could get his wife on board, separated wife on board. His reasoning was that he didn't want to sign first and give the appearance of making the decision to sell for her, which I totally understand. So he wouldn't sign till after she signed the paperwork. Okay, so we sat down with her, came to a consensus on price, and signed everything around. We still needed a quick sale. So on the drive home, Jessica scheduled all our marketing vendors to get us on the schedule ASAP. We still had the auction less than a month away on the 12th, on September 12th, and it was August 13th at this point. So we had pictures, videos, walkthroughs, drones, everything done the next day. Thank you, Carlos from Trade Visuality, for getting on it. And the pictures came back the next day, so we were able to list it Friday the 16th. Now, a similar end unit had recently sold for $410,000, and we were listed at $365,000. Few things to consider. The other one was remodeled and amazing looking. It backed up. Few things to consider. The other one was remodeled and amazing. It backed up to the golf course and was listed in a more favorable seller's market. In addition, the one we were selling was in a bit of disrepair. It desperately needed new carpet, a paint job, a new AC, and had some issues from an upstairs leak. They were going through a separation for a while and they couldn't afford anything. And I totally understand it, but maintenance is always absolute when stuff is happening like that. Anyway, we held an open house the next day and had 7 people come through. Out of those 7, we received an offer from one, and we got an offer from a separate showing the day before. But they were a bit lower than the list price, and we still didn't have a place for our client to move. So finally, we were able to get a little creative actually with this one. With the second offer that came in, even though they were lower than the first one was a loan, and it would have taken more time to close. Where the second one was cash, an investor, they weren't moving in. We had a few more options. They were offering us terms over price, really. We were able to negotiate a year rent back so she and her kids could stay another year paid up front. We took a hit on the price, but what I tell most people is that terms are often more important than price. Investors always know that. And now we had to get the husband on board because he would need to split the remaining proceeds with her, and we were giving some of his money away in her rent. So I get him on the phone, and of course, he wouldn't sign a thing because he wanted the value added to the amount of money he was getting back. I think it's fair. So we put a price of $20K on the rent back, and she had to spend $10K of her proceeds and shift it in his direction. That way it would look like a $20K swing, and that was quite the long, strenuous, and stressful negotiation, and probably the worst negotiation of the whole transaction was between those two getting that settled. And this is where I always tell people, sometimes I'm more of a counselor than a realtor. I mean, they both had invested best interest, but neither of them wanted to help each other out because they only saw their own invested self-interest, which felt like less than the other person's. And besides that, I wish I could say it was a smooth transaction. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, but we had a battle the whole way. A leak upstairs came up in the inspection. The AC completely went out 4 days before closing. We had to switch title companies 5 days before closing because of a hiccup with the closing, and a little bit of my fault being annoyed with that. And we found out there was a second mortgage on the home. Man, so they were going to get less back. And the whole time we're trying to motion to cancel in the clerk of the courts because we have an offer and there won't be a need for an auction, but the auction is still scheduled. So we need to satisfy the judgment before the auction or get it canceled. On September 10th, we closed on the property for $320,000, which sounds like a hit, but it really wasn't in today's market. It actually, with everything that it needed done and with the rent back and everything, we did actually pretty well in the time frame that we had. And we should talk about what most of you probably want to know. What did the clients clear after everything? Well, so after everything was said and done, after her paying 12 months and a security deposit, pet deposit, everything, the second mortgage, her bank account saw roughly $44,000. Now he had to find a new place. Like I said, he was getting evicted and from his current place, and that was happening the same day as the auction. But at least he had a reliable job, and his bank account saw $68,000. Playing the speculation game, but also very true. If it went to auction, the only person who would have won would have been the investor. And the investor that purchased the place. I mean, these are regular people struggling with a hardship and need help, but who can they turn to? All the vultures are swarming, wanting their place. So yes, they had to sell their home, but they were taken care of and not taken advantage of. I hope you enjoyed this story. I couldn't drop their names. I wish I could. It's pretty windy out here. I hope you could hear it just fine. And this story was one that was quite the struggle. It's always interesting when you make a lot less on homes that you spend way more time selling. But I'll tell you, they're way more rewarding. They're way more rewarding. And I think that's the takeaway from this is sometimes you have to make a profit, and sometimes, well, all the time, you always have to do what's right. Sometimes you have to make a profit, but you always have to do what's right. That being said, if you or someone you know is facing foreclosure, don't wait until it's too late. Reach out to me and Jessica. There are options to consider like modifications, forbearances, deferments, and other ways to refinance with approved credit to reinstate the loan. But all these come at a cost, and it's best to talk it through with someone. I'm Trevor Snyder with the Locals Group at LPT Realty, and I hang my mortgage license at Empire Financial. And now's the time for the 1% of you to subscribe, hit the like button, and most of all, comment. Either way, we'll catch you in the next video.